Welcome to the NFL salary exploitation for NFL week. Let me fucking start that all over again. Welcome to the salary exploitation for week 4. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Russ here with us, who broke down some salaries to start off the week and see if you can get some discrepancies between the sites. Pretty wild week because I think a lot of value has opened up here. You touched on a lot of value plays here.
Well, you know what? This is a lot different than last week, actually, because last week was RB Apocalypse, and there was a lot of annoying values that kind of opened up, in my opinion, where it just made this slate really bogged down and confusing. This one, it's just like, all right, Bears, what do you got for me? Am I putting you in cash or not? And that's kind of the question I've been asking myself since I looked at this slate. I think it's honestly fairly simplistic. One of the pay down options you're going to go in terms of teams, and I think things are a little more solidified heading into the first weeks of bye weeks.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you look at quarterbacks here. We're dealing with some backup situation for Brian Hoyer, who, well, I think we should call it as it is. This Bears offense looks better under Brian Hoyer.
No doubt about it. It looked better, when he came in the week before. Brian Hoyer was a starting quarterback for most of last year, and he played pretty well under Bill O'Brien. I think he came in, showed control, and really, brought it into the matchup with the Cowboys. And so there's, as much as I love Kevin White, I loved him as a prospect. I love him as an athlete. I think his college career was very prolific, but he doesn't look very good right now. And I know people see that 30-yard catch and that catch, where he caught it behind the guy's back and stuff. But he got 14 targets and didn't do very much with it. My concern for Hoyer is if he continues to go to Kevin White, even if things aren't working. But overall, he looks really good. He looks much more in control of this offense than Jay Cutler did. I love this matchup against Detroit, and obviously you're dealing with a minimum price in Hoyer. So you're obviously dealing with, Jordan Howard starting at running back, who we'll get into in a second. I think Hoyer's a great value. Depending on what wide receivers you can get in, I think he's a potential cash option as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is obviously a different situation, from starting other kind of bare min quarterbacks. We used Hoyer last year at bare min. There was a stretch there where it was 5 or 6 weeks of Brian Hoyer, and you used him in cash games. You used him in GPPs because he was so cheap, and we know he can get the job done. Your next guy here, you're looking at Kirk Cousins, who, in terms of pricing, DraftKings, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, and FanDuel is a little different. Even fantasy draft, it's kind of like I'd say those and that and DraftKings are pretty similar. But I love this matchup. I think there's plenty of stackable options here. Could be another week to use Jordan Reed as a contrarian option. I love Cousins at his price. He opens up a ton and has a super high upside. I honestly think he can be a top 5 quarterback next week in terms of fantasy total scoring. We've seen the imprint of what this offense looks like. It just hasn't hit yet. He has 30-point fantasy upside and 3 touchdown with 300 passing yards. So I'm in. I think this is a really high upside week for him and a lot of his passing options as well.
Yeah, I definitely do too. I like Cousins. I think obviously the matchup pretty much suits him. I think everything is kind of going in his favor. In terms of running backs, another Bears guy here, Jordan Howard, who we just saw the news with Jeremy Langford, who's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. But there's no doubt about that. Jordan Howard looks like the better back from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I think we got to get a few weeks to see, when teams start to game plan for Howard and how he's going to look. But he certainly looked better early on in the season. He's in that same price range on DK that Vereen and Jerick McKinnon were last week. His FanDuel price is still pretty nice. I think against this Detroit offense, I'm looking to stack this Bears this Detroit defense. I'm trying to stack this Bears offense. If I said that the first time, then I'm a little like a record that just skipped, and we're going to move forward thinking, I'm in 1998 again. My Britney Spears CD just skipped. Oh, okay. He didn't listen to Britney Spears as a child. Just kidding. It was actually NSYNC and Britney Spears. Anyway, Jordan Howard, the basically early week running back that's opening up, I think, on both sites and fantasy draft as well. 7,300. Certainly don't mind that. So that's kind of what you're looking at. And I'll let you introduce this next man, who's not even that great of a value. But I didn't see a lot, honestly.
Melvin Gordon is who you're referring to. You didn't want to just jump into Melvin Gordon. I know you love Melvin Gordon, so I just was surprised that you even want to include me in this. You wanted to hog them all to yourself.
Yeah, well, last week went okay. Positives, 86% of the snaps he was in. Looks like he's going to be the receiving down guy. Had a screen at around the 16-yard line that should have gone for a touchdown. But for once, Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers kind of overthrew, the screen. Otherwise, it would have been 2 touchdowns. But, we're going to be looking at that. He was not good on the ground. Somehow the Colts shut him down. That's not a good indicator for sure. But it's looking like he's going to get, 15 to 20 touches plus passing down work every week. So I like that. DraftKings, really nice price still. FanDuel, that's tough. I might be taking the week off from him at 76, at least in cash. But fantasy draft and DK, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too, especially with the passing work. I think even though the price jump on DraftKings has gone up a little bit, 6,300, I'm still okay with it because, as you mentioned, playing a significant amount of snaps works well in the passing game. We've seen that. Also, great matchup against a team that's going to have a shortened week. Now they go all the way to San Diego. That puts the Chargers in a good rebound spot there.
Yeah, no, absolutely does. And but I like Gordon, but I think there are other options in this FanDuel price range.
Yeah, I definitely do too. 7,600 just seems a little bit steep. In terms of wide receivers, you're looking at a lot of value guys. Adam Humphries, who just had a big target game against LA and looks to kind of be the more significant kind of role behind Mike Evans there.
Certainly. And he's the slot guy. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is gone. Cameron Brate's going to be a goal line guy, but he's not really a move the chains type possession tight end. Humphries is the slot guy. They have Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans on the outside. Vincent Jackson, some guys like Bolden and Fitzgerald's, and there's other guys that are old and transition to more of a slot role, but he's not that type of guy. He's a deep threat through and through, and that's going to be what he does. So that just opens up a role for Humphries, and I like this quite a bit for him. So against Denver, it's a tough matchup, but bear min on all 3 prices or all 3 slates. Kind of like Cole Beasley last week, you're not getting 25 or 30, but I think you can pretty much lock in, 12 to 15. And at the bare min, you're kind of taking that,
Yeah, I think so. $3K, that opens up a lot of salary. You can certainly do some wild things this week, I think, with all the value that's on the board with Howard, with Hoyer, and Michael Thomas here you talk about. Obviously, this has a lot to do with Willie Snead, who missed the Monday night game. It seems to actually be like a bigger injury than it actually is from what I've read so far.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because we obviously saw Snead get off to a really nice start, but I'm certainly looking at Michael Thomas here on DK. His price is actually cheaper than it was last week. I'm looking at it again on FanDuel. It's very interesting when they drafted him with the pieces they already have and then signing Fleener. But it looks like the first few weeks he's at least going to have a role. And in a Drew Brees offense, that's all you need against, a relatively weak San Diego Chargers pass defense. In terms of the slot, now they're strong. They could shut down Brandon Cooks and maybe the outside receivers. But I like Thomas in the slot here.
Yeah, I definitely do too. Definitely a reasonable price there on all 3 sites. Kevin White, another Bear guy here you're talking about, really cheap. Caught off 14 targets in week 3. You got to like that there.
I'm not looking at him on FanDuel. I think there's plenty more options at receiver you can do. But on DK is 34, and I'd need an egregious price like this to actually think about, rostering him. The targets are going to be there. Hoyer, is definitely looking for him. Obviously, he worked with him a little more on the second team in sort of OTAs and training camp and preseason and all that. So I think that has, the chemistry right now. But he does have Alshon there, I think he's getting a little more used to Alshon. We obviously know Alshon's talent, so I'd imagine some of those 14 targets eventually start getting funneled more to the Alshon side. But as of now, I'm looking at Zach Miller and White, at least for the next few weeks. And in matchups like this, I think you fire away.
I think so too. I mean, I like that game in general. I mean, there's a reason why you have 4 Bears in here. I mean, it's because that Detroit defense really isn't that great. Moving on tight ends, talk about Hunter Henry, San Diego tight end who's filling in for Antonio Gates. Was certainly involved, in that offense, especially down in the red zone. Just nothing could really come through.
Yeah, and I think obviously the play that everyone highlights is going to be the fumble at the end. But even the fumble at the end was after a really nice catch and run. He's looking great out there. I mean, this is what he profiles as, drafted in the second round. Looking really strong here. So as long as Gates is out, and I mean, so the interesting thing to watch for future weeks is Gates wasn't playing a full, plate of snaps anyway. And with Keenan Allen out now, if Hunter Henry emerges, he's going to be an every week option. I think we catch it on, the early trend here before the ownership gets too crazy. It could be New Orleans, so that could push that ownership up a bit. But 2,700 on DraftKings, $5K on FanDuel and 5,300 on FantasyDraft are tremendous prices.
Yeah, definitely. And then you take a look at Zach Miller, who same price on DraftKings.
Right.
And then 500 less on FanDuel.
So this is the problem for me with Hunter Henry. I may be 100% Zach Miller on all sites, this week. So, I mean, for better or worse, I just love this matchup. We obviously saw he's a red zone target. Hoyer's been looking at him, I think pretty much throughout the game and a half he's played, it's been fairly clear who his favorite target is. So, I mean, this just seems pretty simple to me. 2,700 on DK is just a stupid value. So he's going to be, I don't know, because he was 0.7% owned in some tournaments I was in this week, but yeah, maybe he's less than 10% on some sites. So that'd be good. I'll take him at 20%. I don't care. I'm firing away with him in cash.
Yeah, I think, you're really looking, you kind of have to. I just feel like if you're going to get him at that price,
yeah,
why really avoid? Looking at this week in general, I don't think there's really too many great spots for tight ends to really pay up for either.
No, I don't either. I mean, as mentioned, you can go with Jordan Reed. We'll see if Delaney Walker plays, but yeah, Zach Miller, he's my guy right now.
Yeah. Looking at defenses here, you got the Baltimore Ravens taking on Oakland. They are at home. Pretty cheap prices across all 4 sites, especially DraftKings 2,400.
Yeah. I look at the Ravens versus the Raiders. Both teams have been pretty inconsistent. I like Derek Carr. I like Amari Cooper, but I kind of look at this Ravens team. They've been forcing turnovers. They've been getting pressure. I'll be interested to see, if they can force Carr into a few mistakes. And really, like you mentioned, the price on DK is what I'm looking at. Other than that, I think it's kind of a pay up this week at defense, which we don't like to say normally, but other than the Ravens, they're really the only team in that lower range that I like. On FanDuel, I just don't think you necessarily need to do that at 44 just because it's so closely grouped to everyone else, but FantasyDraft as well. I'm looking at the Ravens, maybe a potential, interception pick 6 or get a few sacks here and there. So I do like that at home, but yeah, overall, more of a tournament move.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think here is my cash game defense for the week that you highlighted, looking at Houston taking on Tennessee.
Yeah, this is looking pretty good here, in my opinion. Obviously, we know DeMarco Murray's been crushing in both the, short passing game and running game, but that's a good matchup for the Texans defense. They're front 7 versus, this Titans run game with no passing weapons to speak of. We like Tajay Sharp as a player maybe someday. but as the number one target in an NFL offense for a 5th-round rookie, that's a lot to ask, And with Delaney Walker out, it's just putting so much on his shoulders. We're seeing Rashard Matthews get involved, Andre Johnson get involved, but these guys aren't necessarily difference makers. So I think the Texans are a great matchup, great upside, and really, really high floor, I think.
You're not worried about the Andre Johnson revenge game?
Well, now that you mention it, no, not really worried about Andre. He does seem to have his niche of getting those really hard to get like red zone touchdowns. This one last week got called back, but that seems to be his thing right now.
No, it definitely does. We're just kidding.
Yeah.
Don't let Andre Johnson really scare you away.
No, but yeah, point is there though, for sure.
Yeah. That's going to wrap things up for the salary exploitation for week 4. Be sure to head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com to check out all our great content that's rolling out. And if you like our podcast, be sure to subscribe and give us a like.